Hey guys, I'm Terry, and that's Nick, and we are ready to break down the most important series that we
You
have
already did that, though.
In the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. Um, the battle of the Wild and the Stars, the current Minnesota team and the former Minnesota team, the Wild and the Stars, who have played each other once. This will be their second playoff series against each other here, and I get to go first. Um,
What?
and it's and Nick, we've been switching back and forth
I
each
know,
one.
I
It
know.
just happened to be that Nick got to go first with the Islanders, and it just happens to be that I get to go first with the Wild. And Richie's excited. Yes. So, how can the Minnesota Wild win this series? Well, if you've watched other previous shows out there, this question is not valid. That there's no possible way that the Minnesota Wild could win the series. But I disagree. So, and I'm going to come out here from a different thought process that a lot of people aren't going to think. The main thing here is Dallas Stars is going to be focusing on Kaprizov. They want to shut down Kirill the Thrill. That's what St. Louis did last year. That's how St. Louis won that series. Even though they tried to shut down Kirill, they weren't able to completely shut him down. Fiala disappeared in that series. Dean Evison didn't coach, did not make any coaching adjustments. I've already seen Evison grown as a coach um, over the last few weeks with the fact that he has Brock Faber listed to start in the playoffs on that third line. It does look like Brock Faber will be on the playoff team. And this is a Dean Evison's coach who likes his veterans. He likes the old guys, but he's learning the new way of hockey, and that's speed and skill. And having Faber in the lineup is great. My thought process: the Minnesota Wild wins this series by Gustav Nyquist. I've been saying his name quite a bit recently. So the Dallas Stars are going to focus on Kirill Kaprizov. Matt Boldy is going to get some chances. That line has to score. They have to bring what they have before Kaprizov got hurt, Johansson Boldy combo. But the Stars defense is also going to focus on Boldy. That leaves that third line with Steele, Foligno, and Gustav Nyquist, who had 5 points in his 3 games with Minnesota. I said when the Wild traded for Gustav Nyquist how excited I was about that trade. He's looked great since he came back and started playing for the Wild. The Wild win this series by Gustav Nyquist performing well and bringing offense on that third line, and by a good performance in net. Who's going to be in net? Dean Evison he said that he decided. Dean Evison says it was decided. It's been decided for a couple days now or longer who's going to be in goal. But the Wild are not revealing that information because it gives them an advantage. One thing about the Dallas Stars, we know who's going to be in net for the Dallas Stars. The Wild know it's going to be Jake Ottinger, and they can focus on Jake Ottinger's strengths and weaknesses. Gustafson and Fleury are two completely different goalies that play two completely different styles, and Dallas has to focus on both ahead of the first playoff game. So that's another advantage for the Wild. The last third thing before we get to Nick, the Wild win this series. Joel Eriksson Ek potentially could be returning. He's on the plane. He's going to be going with them, traveling to Dallas. And Dean Evison said that he's not going to need any practices. If he's good to go, he's in the lineup. And if he plays in game 1 or game 2, and he's his normal self or 75% of his normal self, the Wild can win this series. Nick, how can the Minnesota Wild win? Now, before you answer that question, the Minnesota Wild have not won a playoff series since 2015. Everybody knows about it. Can they win this series? And how do you think they get it done?
Yeah, I do know that Minnesota does struggle in the playoffs, and that's just not in hockey. It's in other sports as well. Yeah, we now Richie, we do have that covered. We will get to that. We
Yes,
are not.
yes,
Yeah,
that is a part of the show. I wasn't going to try to skip it.
yeah, and I remember last year in the playoffs, the Blues in the first round were my biggest bet of the year, just because they were that big of a dog. Because the Wild were favorites last year heading into the first round. Now they're dogs, which kind of draws my interest here. What's good, Sammy Coleman? But yeah, looking at this, pretty simple. It's the way that they won without Kaprizov. It's the hockey they were playing without Kaprizov. Defensive, low scoring, low event hockey. That's what the Wild need to do in order to win this series. And they're going to have to hop on the Gus bus and ride this all the way to the Stanley Cup. If they are planning to make a long run, it's got to be Gustafsson. Have Fleury there as your veteran experience. Have that as your fallback plan. If Gus struggles in the playoffs, you have a veteran goaltender who's won a cup as your backup right now. Similar to in Vegas, where they'll have with Brossoit and Quick, you have your veteran goaltender there if need be, if the younger guy struggles. Gustafsson is somebody who's, if he does exactly what he did in the regular season, the Wild play strong in front of him, play good defensive hockey in front of him, the Wild can win this series. And I think they are very live as the underdog to win this series. And we will get into that during series predictions. This is going to be a great series. And here's another thing that they should try to do, the Wild, drag these games into overtime. The Dallas Stars really struggled past 60 minutes this season, and we saw that with their record here. Yeah, they got the 2 seed. The only reason why they got the 2 seed in the Central is because they got points in, I believe, 14 games they lost. Yeah, they got points in 14 games they lost because they had 14 overtime losses this year. So this is a team that we're going to see a lot of low-scoring games. A lot of overtimes, I think. The draw is going to be something. I don't bet draws. I'll probably be sprinkling draws in some of these series. This is one where you probably should throw a quarter unit on draws during this series. And he said 9 shootouts. You only lost 3 of the 14 overtime losses in shootouts. So 11 of those were in overtime. But yeah, I'm going to look at draws. I'm going to look at unders in this series. And I'm going to look at the underdog in this series as well. I think the Minnesota Wild are very live to win this series.
All right. Before we get to the Dallas Stars part, Richie says, "Have you truly looked at our third line?" When I was bringing up Gustav Nyquist, I wasn't saying that does Wild have a better third line than the Stars. I wasn't saying that at all. But I'm saying that that third line for the Wild is crucial. It's
It's very
crucial
strong
for
for
them to
Dallas as
win.
well. Sagan, Marchman, and Domi. That's a really
Yeah,
strong line.
that's exactly why the Wild need that third line to show up because the Stars have depth. Wedge came back strong, yes, but he's not going to be starting in goal.
No, it's gonna be Jake
It's
Ottinger.
Ottinger.
We'll get into
It's
Jake
Ottinger.
Ottinger of how the Stars will win this series.
Everyone had us wrong. Sam says Stars mid as fuck, and maybe one draw this series. Only one. All right.
I think we'll get 4.
Going up to the next part of the show. How can the Dallas Stars win this series? And again, Richie, I disagree when you said about not only focused on Kirill. That is how the Stars win this series, is shutting down Kirill Kaprizov. One other thing I would suggest for the Stars, cut Ryan Suter's ice time down. If he's on the top pair, I won't get into it. But he is old and should not be on the top pair. And if he is on the top pair and is getting a whole bunch of ice time for Dallas, that is not a way to win the series. Put Heiskanen on the ice as much as you can, and stop Kaprizov. That is how the Stars. If Jake Ottinger stands on his head, and the Stars can shut down Kaprizov, shut down Matt Boldy's line, they can win the series. Nick, Dallas Stars, how can they win this series against the Wild?
Find a way to win past 60 minutes because there's going to be 3 to 4 games that go past 60 minutes in this series. This is a team that struggled. Granted, it's different in the playoffs than it is in the regular season. It is 5-on-5 overtime, so that's definitely a plus for the Dallas Stars here. It's pretty simple. Ottinger, play exactly like you did against the Flames last year, and Stars, give him some freaking support. Don't give him a goal a game, 2 goals a game. You're going to need to score 3-4, I think, a game in order to beat the Wild here. And it's going to be a lot of 3-2 games. I think the race to 3 is going to be very important in this series. And you're going to need, I think the first team to 3 is going to win these games. So, once again, same as the Minnesota Wild. Good goaltending, strong defense, play strong in front of your goaltender. Don't give up too many high danger chances. And get those lucky bounces, get in front of the net, get those deflection goals, find any way to get a puck past these goaltenders, because this may be the best goaltending matchup in the first round between Gustafsson and Ottinger. These are two.
Assuming Gustafson's in net. That was the next thing I was
Assuming
going to say
Gustafsson in
here.
net.
How can the Dallas Stars win? And that's if Dean Evison goes to his coaching of last year
And
and
goes to
decides
Fleury.
to ride Fleury throughout the playoffs. If that is the case, then the Dallas Stars can win by Fleury
5
being.
goals. Or
I'm
five,
not
five,
saying that
yeah.
he is washed, as a lot of people did, especially early on in the season, but he's not the goalie he used to be, and he's not as good as Gustafsson. So
Yeah.
I'll say that.
It was a problem when Cam Talbot was your better option in the playoffs last year.
Exactly. And we've all seen what Cam Talbot has done this year. Series
I think
predictions, Nick. What do you think happens? Minnesota, Dallas. What's your predictions in the series?
7 games. I think this series goes 7 games. I think this is a coin toss series. So I'm going to side with the underdog here. I'm going to say Minnesota in 7. Only because of their dog. If the Dallas Stars came into the series as plus 120 underdogs, like the Wild are, I'd be on the Stars. I think this is truly a price play for me. I think this is a pick'em series, and I think maybe you can give a slight edge. Maybe make them slightly favorite the Stars because they have the home ice advantage. Maybe make a minus 120. But I think these two teams are almost carbon copies of each other. Like these are two good defensive teams with very good goaltending. Like that's the way these two teams look to me. They got good upside on some really high end talent, whether it's Robertson or it's Kaprizov. I don't think it goes 5 games. I think this series goes 7. I truly do. If I had to pick one series to go 7 games, it's this one. So I would take this series to go 7, and I would side with the underdog if I had to bet if I bet a side in this one, which I may end up getting around to betting the Wild plus 120 in this series.
All right. Shop your lines. I didn't really mention that in a couple of the other shows that we did so far. We're seeing different odds at a lot of different books for series predictions. For me, I could see this going either way. Um, what I want to happen and what I think happens, I think the Wild lose game 1. I think they lose Monday. They win game 2 in Dallas. Head home for game 3. If you've watched Minnesota in the playoffs or if you've looked at their history, the Wild win game 3s. Game 3 is a game that I'm going to be targeting Minnesota very heavily in game 3 at home. I think they win game 3. I think they win game 4, have a 3-1 lead, go back to Dallas. Dallas wins game 5. Minnesota wins in game 6 in overtime on a goal by Gustav Nyquist. Is my
Okay, there you
prediction.
go.
I'm all about Gustav Nyquist, and I've mentioned his name so many times. I think he gets the game winner in overtime in game 6 in Minnesota, and the Wild beat the Stars in Minnesota in 6. Sam says Wild in 6. So maybe not as descriptive as my Wild in 6, but no, I'd love to see that. We love that way of thinking. Everyone has been down on us the whole season. We need that. Richie,
I don't think I've seen another person pick the Wild other than you and I.
Yeah, Richie. Everybody is on Dallas to win this series. The videos I've watched, everyone loves Dallas. So people really like you guys. You think you win Game 4 on the road? It's possible. It's possible. I could have 4 and 5 switched up. Finish at home. Hey, we'll see. We'll see. If the Wild do break my heart once again, I won't be totally surprised. But that is the predictions, series predictions for the Minnesota Wild and the Dallas Stars. Stay tuned, and we'll be doing which one next? LA.
We'll be doing the Vegas Golden Knights and when we switch divisions, we go to the division winners first, and then we go to the 2-3 matchup.
All right. Well, we may finally disagree coming up soon. So
Yes.
we'll see. We'll see you guys soon.